What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. And this one, I'm going to go over the 5 wide receivers that I've identified as the worst values in fantasy football. These are guys that I'm pretty much drafting absolutely none of, and I think a lot of them are actually really good players. And I think it's going to be a guy. These are going to be a lot of guys that you might be tempted to draft just because of name value, and guys that really aren't going to end up helping your fantasy team that much. And I don't think it should be all that shocking when they don't. So yeah, this will be the second video in the series. The last video was my 5 best values at wide receiver, and then I'll be following this one up with more videos on values at running back, tight end, and quarterback. Then after that, I'll get into some more draft strategy stuff and maybe some like high end, like league winners, sleepers, all sorts of that stuff. So we're really getting into the thick of the off season here. We got about 3 months before the NFL season starts, and it's getting super exciting. So yeah, I'm super excited. And with that, let's get into the first player. So my first pretty much undraftable wide receiver that I found so far here is DEEBO Samuel. I've got him listed as my wide receiver 33. He's being drafted at an ADP of wide receiver 17. So that's a pretty significant drop. DEEBO Samuel is like a late third, early fourth round pick normally, and to me, he's more worth like a sixth or seventh round pick. And really, he's only got one truly elite season of production under his belt. In that season, he rushed for 8 touchdowns. I think we can all agree is pretty fluky. And given that CMC's on the team now, it's really highly unlikely that they need to utilize him in that way as much as they did in that season. In that season, they had injuries to all of their top running backs, so DEEBO was pretty much used as a running back out of necessity. I think the 49ers would prefer to make CMC and Elijah Mitchell carry the most of the load there, and then DEEBO Samuel is going to be their screen pass and short area guy. DEEBO Samuel is a really great player, but he still does get out targeted by Brandon Ayuk. I think Brandon Ayuk's a really great player, and this is going to be a really run heavy offense. So there's certainly the potential for DEEBO Samuel to put up a spike touchdown season, and that would be how he meets this value. But the way I have it projected, it just doesn't really make sense. I've got Brandon Ayuk as the number 1 receiver on this team. I've got him listed as my wide receiver 25. So to me, if you want to draft Niners wide receiver, just draft Ayuk and take the value there and avoid DEEBO if you can. Next up, we've got Christian Watson. I've got him listed as my wide receiver 42 despite an ADP of wide receiver 21. And the reason for that is just how big play and touchdown dependent he is. He only had a 15% target share last season and he still scored 7 touchdowns. He had something like 900 yards. And I just don't think this offense is going to be nearly as good as as explosive as it was even last season. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers didn't live up to the standards that we expect Aaron Rodgers to, but it's tough to project anything better than that out of Jordan Love this season. I would expect this to be a slightly worse, slightly slower paced offense, and it's just going to be really hard for Christian Watson to put up numbers that warrant that wide receiver 21 production. This is going to be a run first team, a team that honestly Christian Watson will probably lead the team in targets. I'm projecting him to. I've got given him like an 18% target share, but they drafted Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs is respectable. The running backs are going to get used a lot out of the backfield, so I think they're going to spread the ball around a lot, and there will be some spike weeks for Christian Watson. He'd be a guy that I'm at least more interested in best ball just because of how explosive he is. But and that season long, it's just really difficult to know which weeks Christian Watson is really going to show up. This defense isn't horrible either, so I don't think they're going to find themselves in much garbage time. And I personally would rather have this kind of player like a Christian Watson as my wide receiver 4 or my flex, just so that he's not somebody that I'm counting on week in and week out, and I've just got that upside out of him. But paying wide receiver 2 price for him is just not something that I'm willing to do. Next up here, we've got Michael Pittman. This one really shocked me when I did my rankings. He's projected for me to be my wide receiver 48, which just feels really harsh. He's currently going at an ADP of wide receiver 27, and it makes me really sad because Michael Pittman's a really great player, and he can't find himself a good quarterback or a good offense, and I don't think that's going to change this year. This is going to be a team that's going to run the ball a ton with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. In general, rookie quarterbacks don't throw very many touchdowns, and Richardson himself is not one that I would expect to come in and throw for many touchdowns. He's definitely much more of a rushing prospect. He's really raw as a passer, so I would expect this offense to start slow. And I have Anthony Richardson projected to only throw for 16 touchdowns this season. I do have him projected for like 800 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns, so maybe Anthony Richardson himself can put up some good numbers, but this is going to be a really low passing volume offense. They're not going to pass enough. They're not going to be very efficient through the air. The only real hope here Michael Pittman has is that he somehow sees a spike touchdown production or that Anthony Richardson comes out of the gate hot. I don't really see either of those things happening. Anthony Richardson does throw a really nice deep ball, but Michael Pittman has sort of been used as more of a possession receiver during his time here. Alec Pierce is going to be the guy that might get more of those deep ball passes. So I don't think Michael Pittman's going to be very explosive. And honestly, Michael Pittman's never finished above wide receiver 21 in his 3-year career so far. I think we all agree that Pittman's a really good player, but this is probably the worst offense he's been a part of. If you were a Pittman owner last season, he finished as wide receiver 21, but I know it didn't feel like it. I had him. He just didn't miss any games, and it was still really brutal. So I just don't find myself drafting really any Michael Pittman. I don't see the upside there, even as the wide receiver one on this team. And honestly, the floor is super low with how bad this offense could be. Next up, we've got Drake London. I've got him listed as my wide receiver 44, despite an ADP of wide receiver 23. And honestly, it's sort of the same story that we just had with Michael Pittman. The Falcons just aren't going to throw the ball much. They're moving on from Marcus Mariota with a real upgrade to Desmond Ridder, and I'm only mostly joking there. Desmond Ridder was not any better than Marcus Mariota was last season. I've seen a lot of narratives suggesting that he was, and maybe he will progress and be a little bit better, but there's a long way to go for Desmond Ridder to be even decent this season. So this is going to be a team that's one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL. They drafted Bijan Robinson with 8th pick in the draft this year, so they've made it really clear to us what they want to do on offense. And honestly, that's what they should do with the personnel they have. They've got a really good offensive line. They've got a really good running back room, and they honestly don't have much receiving talent outside of London and Kyle Pitts. They're pretty thin at wide receiver behind those two. And I just don't see any world where Drake London puts up very monster numbers. I'm projecting him for a really healthy 28% target share. That's just ahead of the 27.6 he saw last season. And he still just sucks for fantasy because this is a team that's not going to pass a ton. We saw Drake London be super efficient per touch and per target last season. I think you'll see that same sort of story, but he's probably going to get 90 targets on the season, and that's just really hard to turn into elite fantasy production. You need to put up like an AJ Brown level season when he was with the Titans, where you score 10 touchdowns and are just super efficient. And I don't think Drake London. I can't project Drake London to do that. So it's certainly possible that Drake London breaks the mold and is just super efficient, but given the offense he's in, and given the quarterback that's throwing him the ball, and given the very real chance that Kyle Pitts ends up being the number one target in this offense, I think we're all forgetting just how good Kyle Pitts is a little bit. Um, it makes it really possible for me that Drake London is just a huge bust this season, and I don't really find myself drafting any of him, even though I think he's really good. And last but not least here, I've got DJ Moore as another player that I just don't find myself drafting any of him. I've got him listed as my wide receiver 48, despite an ADP of wide receiver 27. And it's sort of, again, the same situation that we just had with the Colts and the Falcons. DJ Moore is a really talented player on an offense that's just not going to pass the ball much at all. And when they do, I don't think they're going to be very efficient. This is going to be a team that wants to run the ball a ton with Khalil Herbert, Justin Field, Deonta Foreman. They've got a lot of bodies they're going to want to get the ball to on the ground. And honestly, that's what they should do. Justin Fields is arguably the best rushing threat in the NFL at the quarterback position, and that's what they're going to lean on here. They're going to do a lot of read option. There might be some nice play action. There might be some deep balls that really give DJ Moore a couple spike weeks, but I think there's just limited touchdown upside. I believe I have Fields projected for 22 passing touchdowns, which is an improvement from last season, and I'm also projecting Fields for like 800, 900 rushing yards, so a bit of a regression from his over 1,000 last year, but there's also just a lot of target competition for DJ Moore here. I know that he's still going to be the clear wide receiver one on this team. He's definitely the best player, but Mooney, Kmet, and Claypool aren't bad, and that means that I couldn't project DJ Moore for anything over a 25% target share, and I just don't have him getting that 1,000-yard season. This will be the first year there that he doesn't do that, so, and I'm projecting him for 14 yards a catch, which is really healthy, so DJ Moore is going to have to put up a really fluky, efficient season for him to be truly worth his ADP, and I personally think it's more and more likely that he's this low-end wide receiver 3, maybe even low-end wide receiver 4 this season, and I just don't find myself drafting any of him because I just don't see the upside unless Fields takes a Jalen Hurts level step forward, and I don't see that happening this year. So that'll do it for my worst wide receiver values this season. It's maybe I'll do a rerun on this video in a month or so, maybe in 2 months, just as we get deeper into draft season, so you guys can see what we do there. But really love doing these videos. The next one I'll be doing is my best running back value, so stay tuned for that. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel. Make sure you get notifications when I put out new videos. I'll be putting out probably 2 to 3 a week as the rest of the off season goes on. And once we get into the season, I'll be doing 3 a week. So I really love making these videos. If you did like the video at all, if you made it this far, you clearly liked it a little bit. So please do me a favor and click that thumbs up button, give me that like. It really helps with the algorithm, really helps grow the channel, and super excited, getting really excited about this off season, getting excited about football, and would love to help build the channel here. So thank you very much for your time, guys, and I'll catch you next time.